inventing a business today, you do right by people. All people. Those who use it would own it. They'd control it. Pick its leaders. You'd lower the price on your most bought items. Insist if your meat can be British, it will be. And do everything you can to stop the abuse of shop workers. You'd make your carrier bags compostable and spend a chunk of your profits in your communities. If you were inventing a business today, you'd invent co-op. Owned by you, right by you.
Hi everybody, good afternoon. Hope the video perked up the attention. It's the second day and I'm here to talk about cognitive overload. And what a suitable time to talk about this. So look at the picture. So we've been thinking out of the box from 1844. So that's our founders of Co-op at the UK, the Rochdale Pioneers. And we've been in service, doing the business, serving the communities for 180 years. So naturally, we have a lot of legacy we carry in our systems. But trust me, the software I'm going to talk about is not that old. So who we are and what do we do? So we are Co-op, owned by you, right by you, so which means like our business is, the core of the business is its members. So we are the little blue shop that offers quick commerce options to us across the country. We offer legal services. We offer insurance products. We also offer funeral services, and we are the biggest players. We do have robots doing food deliveries, and you do come across them when you're walking about in UK. So if you're on a holiday and you see them, please don't play with them, but just say hello. We're also like the naming partners for the Co-op Live Arena in Manchester. It's one of the most eco-friendly venues in Europe. So that's us. And I'm here. Hi, I'm Preetha. I'm here to talk about one of a roller coaster journey while trying to transform legacy software. But trust me, this talk is not about software or architecture. It's about the people behind it. So we heard Paul mention about Ken Peck. Ken Peck is all about writing, has given lots of talks and materials about writing good quality software. So cost of software is dominated by cost of maintenance. And cost of maintenance indicates that the cost of changes that is rippling through the system. So why is this important? If there are designers in the audience, please excuse me. I'm a programmer. It took me ages to put this slide together. So that is a rough representation of what my team or my teams had to deal with. The shades of gray indicate that we've just been inheriting code from other teams, so we didn't know what was happening inside those boxes. So what does this do? Everything was important. Every priority had to be handled. And we had cognitive overload. So this notion of cognitive load has been popularized with the advent of team topologies and people talking about how much the team can do. We heard people talking about doing more with less. So naturally, the cognitive load was high. So what is cognitive load? According to medical journals, this happens when the brain tries to process too much information or try to do too many works at the same time, thereby impacting the outcome of those activities. So as leaders, we wanted to do something about it. We wanted to protect the team. So we introduced ways of working changes. We introduced stricter WIP limits. We introduced deliberate slack, single front door, all the things you would try from outside. But they all helped. Trust me, they all helped, and I have the data to back them up. But that still didn't prevent us from context switching, because we had so many services, and we had to do something about it. So the people or the engineers who come and complain about this, having too much to do, I asked them for input and said, like, how would you do differently? The option was, like, get more people, and I didn't have the budget. So I said, like, how would you do it differently? So they gave us more feedback, and we took that and presented to the business, and we embarked on a journey. We said, we'll do something about the software. We assembled a team. The Lord of the Rings reference is very important. So we assembled a team. We also assembled a multidisciplinary team because we wanted people to keep things on track. Why, you might think, why a new team? Why not the same team do the work, maybe small refactoring? We wanted to give them time and focus because there were lots of distractions in the old team. We said, okay, a new team will have the time and focus, and this will be quicker. What's a good presentation without a 2x2 matrix? So like any software technical transformation, there's a trigger. We had cognitive overload. Everything was looking good for a period of time. We promised a lot of things, and then reality hit us. So things were falling off the chart. Our numbers weren't looking good. So we should say we were in a trough of despair. Why? It's a new team. They had very fixed outcomes or goals, and things should be working, right? So these are the challenges we thought we faced, or at least people told me this. The software is complex. Well, that's what we were trying to fix, and we're saying it's complex. Okay, there are dependencies. Well, that's again what we set out to fix. And they said, well, we had changing priorities, but you're a new team. And then they said, there's tech debt. Again, that's what we set out to fix. And then they said, like, there is too much expectation on us, and we have too much to do. It was quite baffling, because that's exactly what we wanted to avoid. So what we were seeing as a result, we were seeing cognitive fatigue. So when I was putting this talk together, and I was thinking, like, what's the best word to describe the pressure and feeling we were having? And I came up with this word, cognitive fatigue. And I was like, yeah, that's a good thing to share in a conference. Apparently, I didn't invent it. So it's the deterioration in the ability to think effectively and maintain focus because your brain's trying to do too much. If you're interested in knowing more about this, this is something we don't talk about. We just talk about cognitive load. We don't talk about the effects of cognitive overload. So what does cognitive fatigue do? It puts us into cognitive task paralysis, or my team likes to call it analysis paralysis. So we were just stuck into this loop of discussing the problem, coming up with options, but we didn't know how to step away from it or solve the problem. So we were struggling to process the information that was coming to us. According to medical journals, some of the symptoms of cognitive fatigue include difficulty concentrating or making decisions. This was causing a lot of burnout, and the engineers didn't know what was the real problem. We are having reduced capacity to solve complex problems or do critical thinking. So we're naturally falling back to what we already knew, which was the software that was the problem in the first place. And as more context was shared, people were having difficulty recalling information or processing the information, which was leading to more paralysis because leaders shared context and they expected the team to do something. But we were stuck in the middle because we had too much to process. So we were in this hamster wheel, going fast, but we didn't know how to get out of it. Are these symptoms of something bigger? So, yes. It's us. We were falling under the influence of the software or the system. Our own cognitive biases was holding us back. Yeah, obviously there's Sauron somewhere, which is the software in question, but let's not go there. So what were those cognitive biases? So first, I'm going to try pronounce this. I've been practicing since morning. Ayer legende wool mill shell. If Lena's in the room, and if that's not right, please forgive me. I was looking for a word to describe the chaos that was happening in the team. And when I heard Lena introduce this word at LeadDev London, I was like, yep, that's the one I'm looking for. So Lena talked about this in the context of people trying to do too many things. What I noticed is we were trying to do too many things in the system. So the system that we were designing, people were trying to solve too many problems, which means they were trying to invent the silver bullet, like we heard before. And then we were using a lot of deductive reasoning, which means like we relied on what we knew in the past, even if it was not relevant to the current context. We were trying to make solutions work because that's what we knew about. So the other thing which was really please remember this is a reflective talk. I didn't know about all of this when I was in the middle of the problem. So anchoring bias, we noticed the trend of we were falling back to what the old system would do, or what the old code would do, whether that's relevant or not relevant, to the extent that someone tried to recreate a logic that was deprecated 5 years ago. Nobody had a clue why that code existed in the first place. So we were anchoring on the working software. So this also translates to the law of the instrument, or you might have heard of this as Maslow's hammer. So we had an over-reliance on familiar tools of methodologies, which means we were ignoring or undervaluing other options. We were not even considering or looking outside to see if there's a better alternative. So Maslow's hammer states, if all that you have is a hammer, everything will look like a nail. So those are some useful references, which I'll share later, that talks about the anchoring bias or effect and the law of the instrument. We had optimism bias. We always had one plan, only one plan. And that has to work. So it was the tendency to overestimate the likeliness of experiencing positive events and underestimate the likelihood of experiencing negative events. So which means we were not building resilient solutions. We were not aiming for failures. One question, the message I would get is oh yeah, we know there's a problem, but we'll fix it later. But that's just going to add more tech debt. And as I said, because there's cognitive load, we just wanted work to do something and get things done. So the other bias was we were falling into the trap of sunk cost fallacy, which means we were reluctant to let go of what we were doing. We knew it was wrong. We knew it wasn't achieving the desired results, but we just wouldn't let go. So as a result, we started seeing some behavioral patterns or red flags, which means we had to take some action. So this is a model of action that's proposed by Chris Argyce in his book, Double Loop Learning. And it talks about productive reasoning and defensive reasoning. Productive reasoning encourages working in the open, collaborating, testing your hypothesis. You heard yesterday about a hypothesis-based roadmap. We were obviously, we still have feature-based roadmaps. But we were noticing patterns of knowledge silos, operating alone, making decisions based on beliefs and assumptions. And it was more goal-oriented. We were just setting objective after objective, knowing that we can't meet them. So we were falling in, the behavioral pattern was defensive reasoning. So we had an existential crisis, right? There's this new team. They had to deliver something, and they are struggling because the software is complex. And the people who are working with the software have complex emotions. And obviously, they started protecting their roles. Conversations turned from us, the team, to I, you, my role, his or her role. So we were seeing a lot of this professional protectionism. And we heard Paul talk about the context poisoning, and that's what was happening. Different people would share different context based on their perspective from their role, which was very confusing for newcomers especially. You might think a bit of feedback would help, but no, we were too hesitant to give feedback. So yesterday we heard a talk about being nice and being kind. We were trying to be nice, and nobody wanted to play the bad cop. So ruinous empathy happens when leaders fall into the trap of withholding vital information or feedback, as they believe it might affect the individual or the team emotionally. So this causes a lot of confusion, as not giving the right feedback or critical feedback inflates the ego. And when reality hits, it causes a lot of frustration and anger. So what we were doing was just building up emotional debt. We were not addressing our feelings. We were not tackling people's emotions. And as much as we had tech debt, we had emotional debt. So once we identified what the problem was, we had to do something about it. So like Melissa said yesterday, the team was under a scrappy mode, and we were offering a scale response, which wasn't working. So we had to handle with care. We had to first create awareness and identify your allies. You just can't walk to the team and say, hey, we're victims of cognitive biases. Let's do something about it. So you had to build that awareness and identify who would be your allies when you roll out your decisive plan. You deliberate on the techniques. So you have to do something, and whatever you're going to do is not going to be welcomed. So we had to deliberate on the techniques, so we are having an inclusive plan because of the emotional state. We seek a lot of feedback on the plan from your peers and senior leaders, so we know what to be prepared for, the emotional resistance that's coming our way. We acknowledge the feelings, but don't repeat the mistake that we did in the past. We let emotions take control of our work meetings. So be prepared for one-to-ones that can be very ranty. And keep the focus on outcomes. So all the meetings had to be focused on the outcomes. So this was the plan. And we went back to the basics. So we talked a lot about the why we are doing things, not like what the system should do or what the code should do. So did we break the logjam? So how did we break the logjam? So we offered fresh perspective. There was a team that was struggling with the pains of having the legacy or maintaining the legacy software. So we brought them in and we said, like, would you be open for a chance to fix the underlying problem? They were happy to be part of the solution, and that helped move things faster. We tackled the root cause. We removed the context poisoning, had lots of context setting sessions. I did a lot of office hours with engineers to talk and coach them about architectural strategies. We reduced the noise around decision making. Was lots of people in meetings. So I remember, I think I had one engineering session where there were 20 different non-engineers in the room. So we welcomed everybody to come to meetings, but we set the expectation on what the meeting should be and encouraged the law of 2 feet for people to leave if they're not contributing or adding value. We broke down the work into thin vertical slices using elephant carpaccio model. We used critical feedback from experts through the technical design authority. We focused on outcomes. So there were so many times that conversation derailed and said, like, oh, that code, that module, or that class we could reuse. No, we didn't want that. We wanted outcomes. We will look for options. If reuse is an option, we will do it, but we will not start with the existing code. And we started showcasing work regularly to our stakeholders to build confidence in our hypothesis. So did we really break the logjam? So we did a proof of concept in 3 days. We did our first milestone in 4 weeks. We used the data from the above to understand what we missed and what we needed to achieve the next set of milestones. We did a fortnightly demo of working software to stakeholders, and we delivered the end-to-end solution in 6 months. And we did it. And trust me, I got a few more gray hairs. And this is where the team is now. So what's a good journey if there is no feedback? So we sought out feedback, and the elephant carpaccio model did work, and that's the positive. Obviously, cognitive overload, there was too much information. So these are some books I wish I had when doing this. I definitely recommend reading through them. And this is a quick reference checklist about the Agile conversations. It talks about the 5 different conversations that you can have to help team make changes. And it also talks about the conversational analysis. The examples in the book are on a 2x2 for a 1-to-1 conversation, which is good for like talking to your reports or talking to team leads or something like that. But the situation I was in, I was having conversation with many people, which was challenging. So my reflections, change is difficult. It's always start small and start now. For everyone involved in the journey or involved in the process, always remember digital transformation is not just about the software, it's about the people as well. It's multifaceted, it's socio-technical. We have to manage cognitive load smartly. I intentionally use the word smart here because there might be constraints. Managing efficiently means putting process, putting templates, slowing things down. But when you try to manage your load smartly, you think out of the box. That's when you start innovating new solutions. Our behaviors influence the outcome of change. Every individual member in the team has a professional responsibility to manage emotions and keep them under control. So whatever we want to do is a success. We have to let go of something if you really want to try new things. Emotional attachment doesn't help. Skepticism is extremely contagious. All you have to do, all it needs is one single skeptical comment to derail the conversation. from what you're trying to achieve. And if teams want autonomy, they should take accountability. If they don't want accountability, they obviously need somebody to guide them. So autonomy without accountability is meaningless. So a message as leaders, some things to take away as leaders, is we need to tackle skepticism early. That always comes out of fears. It could be fear of failure, so they might be scared that things wouldn't work as expected. Fear of being judged, as we saw about the code review anxiety yesterday. Fear of losing your professional identity. If you are a subject matter expert and the subject matter that you are comfortable with changes, then you could lose your professional identity. So there could be a multiple number of things that people are scared about, which manifests as skepticism. So we need to tackle them early. Behavioral changes arise out of those hidden fears. So noticing the behavioral changes and managing those hidden fears, having those conversations really helps to avoid them. We, as leaders, have to remove pluralistic ignorance. We talk a lot about psychological safety. We have to make sure we create a platform that when somebody is uncomfortable with a situation, they open up, not be quiet because others are not doing anything. We should avoid normalized deviance. Having a hack or a workaround once in a while is okay, especially if things are broken in production, but that shouldn't become the norm. So always uphold standards and quality, and practice radical candor. People are important, and the work is also important. Always aim to strike a balance between the people and the work by giving critical feedback at the right times. Otherwise, you're only being nice, you're not being kind to yourself or the team. So this is a good tool that Squirrel and Jeffrey recommend to use when you're having these peer conversations with people. And finally, a note to myself, or anybody who's going through these kind of transformation journeys, personal well-being is important. Cognitive overload doesn't only affect teams, it affects us as well as leaders, because when the team feel overwhelmed, they come to us for advice and guidance, and we are naturally taking on more. Simplicity is underrated. I learned it the hard way because I was trying to pitch ideas about making architecture simpler. Nobody understood. I had to call in like jargons from Gartner or somebody like Martin Fowler and say like, oh, they have proposed this and we could do this. And it's like, that makes sense. So thinking simple is really an art. So being a woman in tech leadership is hard because you juggle a lot of responsibilities. And someone like from my background, I bring a different perspective. So I found that it can be difficult to process if people are not used to working in that kind of setting. But if you have the right toolkit and a good peer support, it's manageable. So always be kind to yourself and understand, yes, I'm different. I'm coming from a different country. My perspective is different. And people might not be aware of that. So how do I make myself clear? How do I communicate better? How do I improve myself as a leader? So I'm thankful for the good peer support that I have at Co-op, and I learn from them. And I want to share the learnings, and that's why I'm here. Remember, adversity always makes you a better leader. So finally, change is hard, but be conscious. Be conscious of your cognitive biases or the emotional debt that you have to pay down during the process. When things don't go well, be bold and take decisive actions, even when it's not the popular option. Be reflective, reflect on your journey, understand where things could have been better, and then apply those learnings for the future. Be curious, try to understand the problems, try to understand the motivations behind those problems, and instill curiosity in your team. Thank you.